Welcome back, guys, to another episode of the Solvable Mysteries podcast. My name is Yuras, and as every week, I'm joined by my co host, Glenn Highcove. Man, are you excited about this week's show?
Yeah, definitely. When you and I were talking earlier, I was saying that the crazy thing was this. I thought for a second that this was the case when you had told me about Delphi originally. I thought that I was conflating Delphi with this case, but then it turns out there's a whole other case, which maybe we'll mention, but that was actually the one I was thinking of. But that's how crazy this is that now there's like multiple cases. There's been multiple cases over, let's say, the past 10, 15 years of just these strange either random abductions or just murders of like two little girls that are friends or relatives or etc.
Totally, man. Uh, Today, we're going to be talking about the Evansdale Murders. These are murders that happened in 2012 in and around a little town called Evansdale in Iowa. And I want to quickly read a little bit about this case, give this case profile, and then we can jump into the details and try to analyze what really happened in the Evansdale murders. So, right now on the screen, you see two victims in this case. Both of these girls have been murdered. On the left hand side, you can see Lyric Cook. She was born on October 2nd, 2001. She was 10 years old when she was murdered. On the right hand side, you see Elizabeth Collins. She was Lyric's younger cousin. Their mothers were sisters. Now, Elizabeth was born on July 31st, 2003, and she was 8 years of age when she was murdered. And now everything is happening in Friday, July 13th, 2012. Now, two cousins, Elizabeth Collins and Lyric Cook, were dropped off at their grandmother's home in downtown Evansdale. And I want to quickly jump to the map, and the map might look a little scary for people who are watching this on our YouTube channel because there's a lot of like points and whatnot. And I've listened to a few podcasts on this case, and honestly, I don't think it's even possible to make this understandable to the people that are listening to this, but I will do my best. So, we are now looking at downtown Evansdale. Evansdale is like a small little town in Iowa. It only has like 5,000 inhabitants, but it's actually a suburb of a bigger town right next to it called Waterloo, which has around 60,000 inhabitants. So, in total, in the general proximity of where the girls were murdered, well, not murdered, we don't really know where they were murdered, but where they were kidnapped from, there's around 100,000 inhabitants, right? And now, Evansdale is that little suburb, and this point in the map is allegedly Elizabeth's parents' home, one of the girls that were kidnapped. But some sources state that this point, in fact, is the grandmother's home. So I'm not really certain which house is which because I have pinpointed the grandmother's home of the two cousins as this house in Waterloo, in the nearby city of Waterloo. But whatever, let's just go with the fact that maybe this is the house where the two girls were dropped off. Now, to get a better understanding of what's happening initially in this disappearance case, I want to quickly talk a little bit about the two girls' situations. So, as I've said, their mothers are cousins. Their mothers are sisters. So, these two girls are blood related cousins. Now, Elizabeth Collins' parents have a stable life. At this point, they have good jobs, you know what I mean? They provide for their family. Elizabeth actually has three siblings. She has an older brother named Kelly, two sisters, Amber and Callie, while Lyric Cook, her parents have a very troubled past. They are they have like been to jail. They have criminal records, right? So Lyric Cook is actually not living with her parents, and Lyric's grandmother is her legal guardian. So Wilma Cook, the grandmother of both of these girls, is the legal guardian of Lyric Cook. Now, I want to quickly take a sip of water, dude. Did this make any sense so far?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I think that's a good job of trying to explain what the relationship is between everybody. And I'll say just real quick in terms of Lyric, poor Lyric Cook. You know, her parents. They're. I mean, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say they remind me a lot of like stuff you see in if you ever watched Breaking Bad. You know, like because that series covered so much. And yeah, there's like kind of the action movie component to that series, but there's like the social element of that series that shows like like people involved in specifically meth. You know what I mean? And kind of like a lot of times they'll be both addicts and like part of the retail operations, let's say, of that trade or the trafficking. And it kind of seems like that's the case with their parents, and also on top of that, a lot of the dysfunctional family life that you might expect if there's addiction going on at that level in the family.
Totally. Speaking about Lyric's parents, on the screen we now can see her mother, which is on the left-hand side. She is Misty Cook Morrissey, and on the right-hand side we see Dan Morrissey. At the time of the kidnappings and the murders, they were already divorced. Now, Elizabeth's parents, they had been married still, but they were actually within the same year, from what I've gathered, they also divorced, maybe due to stresses of one of their daughters going missing, which is completely understandable in my opinion. Now, jumping back to the case profile of how the girls went missing and about the whole disappearance, right? I want to quickly leave the map open as I try to portray the timeline here. As I've said, so as I've mentioned earlier, Lyric is in full custody of. I'm sorry, Lyric's grandmother is in full custody of her. And now, if you would look on the map, man, from what I've personally gathered, this is the grandmother's home. It's a house in Waterloo. And now, Elizabeth's parents and Elizabeth lived in this house, according to what I've gathered. Then, Elizabeth's parents usually go to work, and this was summertime. This was happening in July 13th. So I assume school was not in motion, it was the summer vacation. And I believe that the grandmother would drive all the way from Waterloo, well, it's not even that far away, to Elizabeth's parents' home and help take care of Elizabeth while Elizabeth's parents were working. And since she was the legal guardian of Lyric and Lyric lived with her in her home back in Waterloo, she would bring Lyric over to Elizabeth's home, and that's when Elizabeth and Lyric would hang out together. Does this make any sense what I'm trying to say here, dude? Another sip of water for me?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So it's just like a kind of a pretty normal, I guess, childcare arrangement, especially if you have relatives anywhere nearby and if the kids are anywhere near the same age, right? Um,
Totally.
that totally, yeah, makes sense. I guess it also helps establish to us that this was it was really normal for them to spend time together, right? It wasn't a novel thing. It was like that's the everyday life.
Oh, totally, totally. The girls were known to hang out a lot and take bike rides, and actually, this is what they did. So, on one of these occasions, on July 13th, when the grandmother took Lyric over to Elizabeth's home, and they both took their bikes out. One thing to mention that Elizabeth's older brother, whose name was Kelly, he would usually tag along on these occasions. For some reason, he didn't tag along on this trip, and the girls were essentially alone. Another thing I want to mention is that apparently Elizabeth, the grandparents, the grandmother of both girls, she apparently it instilled like some sort of strict rules where the girls couldn't really venture off too far into like the neighborhood. And that's interesting because they did end up, from what we gather, driving pretty far away in the Evansdale area, like in the other side of Evansdale. I want to quickly continue on with what's happening next. So, as I've said, the girls set out on their bike ride around noon, and shortly after, they were spotted about a mile and a half from their grandmother's home near Myers Lake, a place where the locals hang out. So, an interesting point here is that this is where the girls were last seen, I believe, by the grandmother. And as you can see from the map, this is a little point I have here, and it says CCTV of the girls riding west at 12:11 p.m. And that's actually correct because we have CCTV stills, and I want to quickly jump to these stills. I have two CCTV stills. I couldn't find the actual footage, but we can see in this really grainy image right here that there is actually, you know what I mean? There's an outline of someone driving their bikes, and we can actually jump on the map and pinpoint where exactly this area is. So I want to quickly jump to the street view, and I spent some time looking at this, and in fact, I believe it's right around this particular area where the CCTV stills are looking like capturing, because dude, you can see like this outline of this house, right? And these
Yeah.
poles right here. And in fact, I believe this is this house. This is one pole. This is the other pole. And what from what I've gathered, these somewhere here on this house, like these are probably the CCTV cameras that captured the girls. And if we would jump back to the CCTV, as you can see, they are moving in the westward direction. So they're moving in this direction. So I'm gonna quickly draw it out. They're moving in this direction, and this is the westward direction. So if we would jump back to the map, it's actually this direction, and it would kind of make us believe that they were driving to the west. And now, given the fact that their bikes were found here near Lake Myers later on in the day, but the girls have vanished at that point, we kind of have a pretty strong idea of where they may have driven their bikes. So they may have driven their bikes west, and then they headed south down Evansdale, and eventually they probably made a decision. I think they may have turned into this little corner, not corner, I should say, little road. I want to quickly show that on the map. I believe this is like a little bike road, as you can see, like it says bike route. So they may have headed in this direction, or they may have continued going in this direction. I know this is probably crazy for people who are listening to this, not watching on the YouTube channel. My apologies. But then, once again, we have another witness who saw the girls somewhere during the midday while he was watering his lawn. And he saw them passing by, I believe, south on Lake Avenue. So I'm kind of inclined to believe that the girls most likely took this longer route. And now this is where the bikes were later found. Dude, I'm just gonna take another sip of water, dude. Do you have anything to react to? And then I'll finish up the profile real quick.
Yeah, I mean, actually, I mean, I had a kind of a shallow observation. I kind of want to ride my bike around there. It looks like a really neat place, you know. I can't help but look at the nice scenery. I mean, it looks like the kind of place where you would expect, because your kid, maybe if your kid was a reasonable age and had good biking skills and safety skills, like it doesn't look very urban, right? It looks like a lot of just community, other than a little bit of, kind of what commercial or industrial area at the start of it. Kind of, it's all just like suburban housing, and then this awesome little lake park place. which, I mean, obviously, something looks good on a map. Maybe when you go there, it's not so nice, but I mean, so far it looks pretty awesome. I mean, it's really strange to think of the dangers that are out there. But as we've talked about so many times in the show before, there are a lot of reasons why those dangers are out there, even when they're relatively small per population, like per thousand like incidents, let's say.
Totally, totally, dude. Really quickly, going back to the story, right? So, as I've said, the two girls were spotted shortly somewhere around the Lake Myers area. As I've said, this is once again want to draw this out. This is the Lake Myers area, right? And they were spotted hanging around. Sorry, I can't even talk today for some reason. Around this Lake Myers location, right? Now, Lyrics and Elizabeth's grandmother, Wilma Cook, got worried after the girls hadn't returned for over an hour. Because let's remember, this is like a 10-year-old girl tagging along with her 8-year-old cousin. I mean, make your own like judgments on like how do you feel about that? You know what I mean? Them like roaming around. I feel like that's definitely kind of scary to let like these really young girls roam around on their own. So I think the rule was come back home for like lunch within an hour. They don't return home, right? So once Lyric's mother, Misty Cook, that was working at some sort of department store or a gas station in this location right here, once she returned back home, and they decided and they saw that the girls hadn't returned home, uh, everyone started calling friends, family, to see if anyone knew where the girls were. After their searches turned up empty, the family reported the girls as missing to the Evansdale Police Department. Approximately 2.5 hours after the initial bike ride, a search began. Local parks, schools, and other areas were looked through. Soon, the sheriff's department and local fire department joined in the search for the two girls. Now, later on that same day, the girls' bikes and Elizabeth's purse were found near the corner of Myers Lake, but the two girls were nowhere to be found, nor was there any idea of what could have happened to them. Police worked their way around the Myers Lake area but found nothing. So I want to quickly also point out that this right here is where the girls' bikes were found, and I believe Elizabeth's purse was also located in this area that had a non-working phone. And yeah, dude. So this is essentially what's happening here in this case. Another interesting point that I want to mention is that the girls set out from this general location, right? Somewhere from here at around 12:10-ish p.m. And their bikes were found here at around like 4 to 5-ish p.m. Around 1-ish p.m., they have been spotted hanging around this local area of Myers Lake, which is kind of interesting for us because I don't think they were allowed to venture out this far. And just in general, without stopping here for too long, dude, I want to ask you a question since you have a kind of a child who's like kind of in the same age range. Like, is this a normal thing to let a person this age go hang out, so far away?
Man, it really used to be. I mean, that's the thing now. I mean, okay, so in terms of my kid now, like I don't see a lot of people around here let their kids that age do it, but it used to be more common, especially like I would say my childhood in like the late 70s, early into the late 80s, I guess. Um, I kind of was able to do that if I wanted to, and I knew a lot more kid who kids who do. who did. And when this happened, though, I feel like we're well into like stranger danger and beyond, right? As far as how parents rear it. But if it's a small town, then I think it's totally normal. I think a lot of the concerns are for like major urban areas or places with like, I don't know, bigger populations and maybe more like, I don't know, activist parents or something.
Yeah, no, totally. I get it. And this was like Iowa, I'm sorry, Iowa, and this was like Evansdale, kind of a smaller town, has that smaller town vibe. I think people would let their kids roam around more freely than, let's say, in big cities like Los Angeles or New York or whatever, if that makes any sense. Now, I wanted to stop here. Well, the last point I want to mention of this day is that hundreds of volunteers came out organizing candlelight vigils, press conferences, and searches. The FBI eventually joined the search. They sent trained divers to Myers Lake to search for the girls. They even tried to drain the lake to find something of value, but nothing turned up. Um, at the end of July, so let's remember this is happening on July 13th, so mid July 2012. At the end of July, a surveillance video turned up that captured the girls less than a block from their grandmother's house around 12:11 p.m. So, once again, I'm talking about this particular sighting or this CCTV on the map here, and it only turned up at the end of July. So for a good part of July, we had no information about where the girls were even heading. And I guess once they found this CCTV of on the auction house on the other side of the road from Elizabeth Barron's home, they kind of connected the dots that most likely the girls, they headed west and they most likely then headed further east after going down south, you know what I mean? And this is where most likely like the hot zone, I believe, where the police was like focusing on, like this was essentially, I feel like, the hot zone. Let me just like clear this out a little bit, and I wanna type in like the hot zone. So the hot zone, in my opinion, was like this location. If that, does this make any sense? Like I assumed like this is the hot zone for like police, right?
Yeah, I think so.
So
Like where they're gonna have to really try to scrutinize for clues and try to keep people from trampling around too much.
yeah, totally, man. And lastly, I want to say that the last point of interest that I want to mention here is, um, really quickly, also on the map, this is where the girls' bikes were located. As I've said, Elizabeth's purse was also on this trail. I want to quickly jump to this trail to show how the general location was. And dude, I was looking at this the other day, and I was like, this is the shadiest, like, place ever where I would not want my 10-year-old kid or let alone 8-year-old kid hang out. Like, look at this, dude. This is like from a goddamn movie, man. This is like Stranger Danger.
It is. I mean, it does look a little run down. I'll admit that. I mean, it's kind of like it's a little weird. They even have those big fences there. Like I get having the fence on the lakeside. I don't really get what they're like. Maybe it just would get totally overgrown if they didn't do it. I don't know. Maybe you know better than me. You probably have better, closer weather and woods to this than I do have here in California, where I live in Los Angeles. But yeah, it looks. You're right. It looks like somebody could definitely hide in them bushes, and that fence isn't even. That's really the fence isn't as tall as it looks, is it? It's more like a 3 to 4 foot fence, maybe.
Yeah, might be an optical illusion right here, right? So I just want to quickly also reiterate one fact that the girls' bikes were found in at this location at around 5 to 4 p.m. in the evening, but these bikes had already been spotted by a witness at 12:27 p.m. So this witness seen the bikes, but this witness did not report the bikes because all you see is like some bikes on the ground and then you walk away. That's probably maybe even something I would do. Well, it depends. If I saw the purse, I might have investigated, but maybe the purse was like somewhere in the corner. So I kind of understand this person who saw the bikes at 12:30 p.m. to just walk away, but it gives us a really good timeline. It gives us a timeline that if girls were here at 12:11 p.m. and their bikes have already been left abandoned at 12:30 p.m., so it gives us like 20 minutes, that like within 20 minutes from this CCTV getting captured, right, of the two girls driving west near, like from the Elizabeth parents' home, within 20 minutes, they had been kidnapped, man. Isn't that kind of crazy?
Let me ask one thing. Let me play devil's advocate a little bit on that point, just in case, because if I do, if I'm doing it, maybe someone else has the same thought.
Of course.
Is it possible that they could have had a legitimate reason themselves to have gotten off their bikes at that point and then have been snatched after that? So they're off their bikes, the bikes are there. So one thing I thought of, that maybe like someone else who saw the bikes there, maybe people go fishing right there at the lake's edge. Like maybe it's not unusual for people to like jump the fence there, and set up in a certain spot. So maybe when someone saw the bikes, they're like, oh, someone's checking out the fishing area real quick. Like you said, if there'd been a purse or something else of value, even in like a low crime area, that's a little bit alarming. Um, at least here in America, leave our purses and wallets laying around the place. Um, but yeah, it's strange to me that or well, not strange to me. It's interesting to think, like, what do you think of that? Like, is there something that says like they know for sure that, as soon as they left the bikes, you know what I mean? I wonder if there's any case to be made that either they were lured off the bikes to go look at something, you know what I mean? So there
Mm-hmm.
could have been a longer period after they got off the bikes up until, I guess I don't know what
Mm-hmm.
at one point it could happen, but just that was just a thought I had as you were explaining it.
It's a good thought, dude. It's a good thought because I didn't really think about this. Sure, of course. I mean, the way that the purse was left there, I feel like Elizabeth
Yeah.
wouldn't have left her purse, so I kind of think that it kind of happened quick. But I can also totally see how maybe if there weren't any valuables in the purse, I wouldn't completely rule out the theory that, or the line of thinking that maybe as the girls got to this particular point, maybe they leave their bikes here and they go look around or something like that in one of these directions, and it could be the case. I will say the fact that the purse was also located somewhere here as well next to the bikes, I will probably say that I think it happened quick. Now, as I've said, the girls go missing and there's nothing for a very, very long time. I want to continue on with the story. So, 5 months later, after the girls disappeared, on December 5th of 2012, because let's remember, they disappeared on July 13th, and now we're jumping to December 5th, 5 months later. Hunters in the Seven Bridges Wildlife Area, which is located 25 miles away from where the girls went missing, stumbled across two bodies that were later identified as Elizabeth and Lyric. So, for everyone to have a better gauge, this is what I'm talking about. Right. This is the general area where the girls went missing from, the Evansdale area. This is the Seven Bridges Wildlife Area, and I want to quickly jump to the map to give a better understanding. This is around like 25 miles away. Now it's around a 30-minute drive, and yeah, we don't really have a lot of information about this. We just know that the girls' bodies were found. This is the only still from the crime scene that I could find online. And as we can see, we have two white, uh, I would
Articles of clothing.
articles of clothing, or dude, does this maybe look to you like a potential, like, you know how they find dead bodies and they put like white stuff over them, like some cloth over the body? Like, does this make any sense to you?
Oh, you mean like covering them with a blanket or something?
Yeah, would they do
Um,
that 5 months after the fact in December?
oh, gosh, only after kind of capturing what you know what I mean. The only thing is you wouldn't want to contaminate the scene. So a lot of times when I see them cover up the bodies, oh, I'm trying to think. Maybe you're right because sometimes it is out of sort of respect for other people around. But I think now the tendency is to try to like wall off the scene from view. I've seen that in Europe especially, but even here now in the States. I think New York does it especially. Yeah, and then you try to zoom in. But oh, you know what it is? I think my perspective was off though, because now that you zoom in, maybe you're right. Maybe it was some kind of like protective thing, and you know it's sterile, and they got all traces of things, or it could even be a tarp that they're setting up for themselves so they can remove and put things nearby like tools or take specimens and them not contaminate the scene themselves. I'm doing yard work where I'm using tarps for a lot of things and like putting things on the tarps, and that's what I thought of just now. So I think you're right. I take back my my objection.
Totally, man. But this is pretty shocking. You know what I mean? The girls' bodies turn up 5 months later in the middle of apparently nowhere in the Seven Bridges Wildlife Area, which is kind of a secluded little area, which made the which and the hunters when the hunters found these bodies, it apparently was a very, like, it was a stroke of luck, because you could have easily just walked past the bodies, right? I want to quickly read what I have on this, and then we can jump to the details, right? So, as I've said, 5 months later, these bodies have been located. Details of the girl's death have never been publicly released, such as their cause of death or how they were killed. Typically, the wildlife area isn't highly traveled in the summertime. Some have said the fact that the hunters found the girls' bodies in such a remote area is lucky. The following year, okay, so now we would be jumping to the following year, which I kind of already want to jump to the following year because, like, this is all we have at this point, right? So the following year, on June 24th, 2013, so almost exactly a year later, three witnesses, well, they didn't tell law enforcement like all at once, but throughout the year, police received three witness accounts of an older model, large, clunky white SUV, possibly an old Ford Bronco or a Chevy Suburban. This vehicle, something like that. Not this exact vehicle, but a similar model to this vehicle that we
Yeah,
can see.
I remember those things. I just remember. I remember those things definitely. Like those big '80s. Like, oh my God, they're so big. They're like this big. You know what I mean? Like in an era. I don't know. It's even hard to describe how big they are. But I also thought a white Ford Bronco, isn't that OJ's car? OJ did it.
Totally, man. Now, two witnesses said they saw this vehicle between two bike trail signs, while the other said they saw it near the woods, just a few hundred feet away from where the bodies of the girls were found. All three were consistent on the time being 11:30 and 12:30 p.m. I'm sorry, I kind of got that incorrect. The last witness didn't see this vehicle next to where the bodies were found. All of these three witnesses saw the vehicle, if we would jump back to the map, around the same area where the girls' bikes were found, not bodies were found. So this white old vehicle is not connected to Seven Bridges Wildlife Area. It's only connected to the Evansdale Myers Lake location. So somewhere around Arbutus Avenue the vehicle was located. And in fact, I want to quickly mention one thing. Police believe that the person who kidnapped the girls must have been someone who was familiar with Evansdale and the Myers Lake area, and that's because this place where the girls got snatched up is literally probably the best place in Evansdale to snatch someone up. And it's been speculated that the person could have parked their car somewhere here. And if I would like zoom out once more and jump to this little area, this is a wooded area. And see, this is like the beginning of that trail with the fences. So you could, in theory, ask the girls at gunpoint somewhere down this trail a little bit, then escort them here, because this is a wooded area, you know what I mean? If you have your car parked somewhere like around here or something like that, you could potentially escort them, get them into a car, and drive off. Now, this is still a pretty difficult task, in my opinion, because like this was like the summertime and this was like a local hangout spot. So there would be a lot of potential witnesses. But if you're gonna do it anywhere, it's by far the best place because you can't really do it anywhere around like the northern parts of the Mars Lake because it's essentially very open terrain. This is the only place where there's like a huge concentration of like trees that kind of, you know, like block off the view from the neighborhood to the trail, you know?
I just want to throw in my 2 cents a little bit, and this is something I've noticed here where I live, and I imagine if I'm seeing it where I live, it might be common in other places. I feel like one of the unfortunate things about park areas like this, I mean, even really nice parks, they always seem to have like a creepo corner.
Oh, wow.
And I don't know if you know what I mean, but I mean, you'd be really surprised. Always be like this corner of the parking lot. At least some parks I've been to, where like you know, what I mean, the corner of the parking lot where you see kind of more, I don't know, cars parked to people that might be up to no good. You know, people who didn't come there for their kids to come jump on the swing set. Maybe they came there to drink or do drugs or other things. But it's interesting that I'm kind of I'm saying this because I'm trying to match it up, and I'm agreeing with what you're proposing right now. That like somebody knew the area really well. They knew this was like the little corner you could tuck your car into next to this neighborhood, and maybe nobody would notice you, or you don't get hassled or anything. But like logistics wise, it's interesting. Now, let me just before you continue with the timeline, at this point, are they suspecting more than one person was involved, or is it just at this point just thinking about one person in one car?
Yeah, so this actually really, this is a good question. I want to quickly finish off the points I have here, and we'll kind of answer your question here as well. So, really quickly, I just want to mention what in 2020, on the 8th year anniversary of the girls' murders, lead investigator Scott Rieger told the media, and he said that over the years, law enforcement got nearly 2,000 leads. He also stated that he wouldn't comment on how many suspects law enforcement had or how many of them have been ruled out. Scott Rieger also pointed out that law enforcement had vetted a large amount of sex offenders in the Black Hawk County, and you know, this is all happening in the Black Hawk County in Iowa, as well as other surrounding counties. So, this is what I wanted to mention, that we do not know anything, and police will not give any information on who they're looking at, who they have ruled out. They are the only thing I've noted in my head mentally is that someone from police, I'm not sure if it was the same Scott Rieger, said that everyone's a suspect until we find out what happened to the girls. So we don't know how many people. And I will say that this looks like would be easier achievable for if it was a two man operation or like two people operation, you know?
Yeah, I mean that was my first thought. Is like I'm trying to understand once again how one person corrals two people, except like you proposed with a gun, and I guess taking the chance that they won't call your bluff or just panic and run off on you, right? Which, by the way, could happen anyway. Um, but maybe someone who's going to take this kind of chance will be willing to try this a couple times until it happens the right way.
Totally. Can I propose one little scenario in my head that I kind of was thinking about? So, dude, if you would look now at this, right, at the screen, and wait, want to quickly see if everything's good on the recording side. Yeah, because I'm using some new, like, neat little tricks here this week, and I'm
This is
like,
the showcase episode.
yeah, totally. Like new little tricks on the visual assets for the podcast, right? Now, I wanted to say that since one of the neighbors, well, not neighbors, like one of the people who are living in this neighborhood, they kind of saw the girls driving north south, I believe, past on Lake Avenue. So I would assume the girls kind of traveled down here. I kind of strongly believe the girls were driving down here. Now, let's say this white vehicle is parked somewhere along these edges, right? Somewhere around here. It could really be parked anywhere because, like, I believe it wasn't spotted in the same exact spot, or maybe it was. I don't really have enough information. The girls were driving down here. I think the girls must have known about this trail, that you could take this trail right here and you could just drive around the lake. I mean, you know, you're 10 years of age, you're a local of this town. I think you have the knowledge of this back end trail from Myers Lake. I believe that if the girls were driving south on Lake Avenue, they must have passed this white vehicle that was parked somewhere here, that shady white SUV vehicle, right? And from what I think they must have done, they must have driven here, right? And I believe they drove here. That makes sense. Now, somewhere along here, maybe if the dude was parked somewhere here, maybe the person who had his vehicle parked somewhere along this line of Arbutus Avenue, maybe he already had walked down this trail as well, somewhere here, even earlier. Then around this location, the girls run into the dude, and the dude is with gunpoint. Drop your bikes, drop everything you have, follow me. He takes the girls back to his white SUV and then drives away. Does this make sense? And is this like what do you think about the scenario?
That makes sense. It's the one thing you pointed out, I think, several minutes ago, is it still required like really tight timing and a lot of luck, because like look at case in point, the bikes were noticed almost right away, right?
Immediately,
So
totally.
there's like all these people, all these eyeballs driving by, but that makes sense. I like how you propose almost this like good exfiltration route. Now, the one thing, you know, is after the person did the crime, I keep on wondering, did they have handcuffs like attached to the car, the inside of the seats or something? I was trying to think, how would you hold two people down below sight in a car like that? Because it's not like a panel van or something where you can kind of shut somebody in the back. Like we've heard about panel vans specifically being set up with like you know, like chains and handcuffs and ways to strap somebody down so they can't attract attention. In a car like this, the tinted windows kind of helps. I guess if you had like handcuffs, this is awful because it sounds like it's like an instruction manual. I'm just trying to understand. I guess the reason why I'm going to such pains to describe such a disturbing scenario is I'm still trying to understand how one person drives the car now and controls two people, I guess, in the back, unless he's holding one person hostage against the other.
Totally,
That
dude.
makes sense.
No, you are raising amazing questions here because I have the same. You know, I went to bed yesterday, and before I went to bed, I was like kind of putting all the information I gathered over like the last few days about this case, and I was kind of thinking about it, and I couldn't really see a way in my head how this was a one man operation, one person operation. Maybe it was like women who did this. Who knows, right? We don't know anything at this point. But it would be so much easier if there were two people, if there was, one person waiting somewhere in the car, you know what I mean? And then the other person was already transporting the girls at gunpoint into the car, and this person would sit at the back of that SUV, and you would have a getaway driver who just drive them out of here, while the other person at the back would control the two girls. Like that would make way more sense, wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, especially if the person was able to disable the door handles on the inside on one side of the car. They could basically just shove them both from one side, you know what I mean, and then just block that side, the door on that side of the car. And then, yeah, the other thing is too, I mean, you have two fairly young people, who are the victims here. You could potentially leverage the threat of doing harm to one against the other. That, like, if you run and try to get away, I'm going to do something really awful, you know what I mean, and then describe it, and that may be enough to like force compliance. And then the carrot in this case is the, well, do what I say and I'll let you both go.
Totally, totally, dude. One last thing I want to mention is this particular area right here on the map. This is like the last thing I want to talk about the case. It might be of interest to our audience members as well. This spot a little bit further down into the secluded stranger danger back trail road where the girls' bikes were found, a little bit down there is like a hole in a fence. What this actually means is, if we would jump quickly on the little highway, this is a major roadway. You know what I mean? We're jumping to the major roadway because the lake is kind of connected to a major roadway. We would jump here, this area right here, somewhere here. Maybe they fixed the fence. Maybe it was there. Somewhere here it was like an opening in the fence, right? And as you can see, like where the girls' bikes were found, it's like a really wooded area. It's like blocked off from the highway as well as from the neighborhood of Evansdale. But is there a line of thinking that maybe, oh, I assume this was the break in the fence. Is there a line of thinking that maybe someone stopped at this major roadway, then snatched up the bodies? I feel like this is insanely unlikely, but I didn't want to throw this out. This particular scenario would work like this: someone drives here, parks their car, goes through the hole in the fence, waits for the girls. The girls arrive from, this direction. He waits for the girls, tells them, yo, leave your bikes, get back to my car, and then drives away. Like, this scenario, in my opinion, is definitely like less likely than the first scenario. Just wanted to get your thoughts about this one as well.
Yeah, you know what? So I was thinking this out, and actually, let me rewind it for a second, because the one way where this might work out is, um, for the other theory, the one we were looking at before. Well, actually, for both of them, in the case of like how this is drawn here, how how did they not leave big tire tracks across that grass and these other surfaces?
This is very good, dude. This is something I couldn't really verify, but around this location right here, strange tire tracks were located. But this was on like a map from Webflute, and apparently it was located by I don't know who. Like I couldn't really verify this fact. This
Not
is
the cops though, huh?
probably not
Yeah.
cops, yeah, but someone apparently located unusual tire tracks in this location as well. So this kind of works well with the first
Okay.
scenario as well, yeah.
Yeah, which I mean, maybe that's some of the evidence they're sitting on, that they have a specific kind of tire they're looking for. Maybe that even matches why. Maybe that even feeds into some of the Ford Bronco or Suburban, Chevy Suburban,
Yeah.
yeah, clues, because it's the same size vehicle. So yeah, the one thing that does go for it is, I guess it would be a speedier getaway, right? Because it is some sort of robust thoroughfare there. And so here's what I think would work is if they pulled it aside, maybe it makes it easier for one person to look up and down the road and see who's coming. So maybe the level of visibility for who's coming to pick your moment makes sense. And then also, because it parallels the bike path there,
Yeah.
along the lake, maybe it gives you opportunity to sort of set up. Um, you know what I mean? Though it's not quite that far ahead, but yeah, potentially someone could like backtrack and then ambush them. But I still feel like it takes two people at least.
Yeah, it takes two people at least, and I kind of feel like this is an unlikely scenario because like this is a major roadway that is like heavily traveled by a lot of cars. I feel like this like little Arbutus Avenue is like on the sleepier side of Evansdale potentially, you know what I mean, on the corner of the Lake Mars territory. I feel like this is definitely like the safer option if you're like the culprit, if you don't want to get caught, because I feel like this is like two lanes, dude. You have like two lanes of ongoing traffic, and wouldn't you agree that someone would have seen
Yeah.
something, and it's like way too risky if you're like a culprit, you know?
Yeah, and even the other thing I was looking at, like when this happened. I mean, even now a lot of home security cameras are just barely getting to the point where you can even read like a license plate that's on the same side of the street as your house. You know what I mean? It's as obnoxious as that sounds. Even like 1080p cameras, which have been around for a long time now, but that's pretty good resolution. That's about what you can expect from a lot of home security systems, especially back then. If you got up to that, you were lucky. Um, it's not, I mean, I guess the person was basically able to take advantage of an era where you still didn't have like all these ring cams and all these other cameras that could capture stuff. I mean, look at that case in point. Our only footage of the two little girls for this whole kind of period we're looking at is like a potato cam, you know?
Totally, man. All right. So at this point, since we have gone through the timeline and what happened in this case, it's a sad situation, but it's been almost 10 years, I believe. This year, yeah, this July 13th will mark the 10-year anniversary of the Evansdale murders, and we don't have anything to go off off on, yeah. So it's kind of strange that such a case is not solved now. Obviously, this case was linked to the Delphi murders, as you've said, and some other stuff. But now I have like some interesting details about this case. I think we need to like discuss them, go over these things. So the first kind of interesting detail was Lyric's parents. And I know that you've looked into Lyric's parents a little bit. I also looked into Lyric's parents a little bit. I want to jump to Lyric's parents right here on the visual assets. As I've said, Dan Morrissey, Lyric's father, had already been divorced with Misty Cook Morrissey, her mother, as this happened. Misty Cook Morrissey was apparently also convicted on some drug cases, but like I think for possession. Nothing like as major as Dan Morrissey. Dan Morrissey was like booked on high amounts of meth production and distribution. And Dan Morrissey, I think, didn't take a plea deal. And he got like 90 years with the minimum sentence that he has to serve at least 30 years before like the parole or something like that, right? And the only thing I wanted to say here is that early on in the investigation, police looked at Lyric's parents because they have troubled drug past, and they kind of focused in, zeroed in, and they tried to see if there's a potential connection. At one point, from what I've gathered, like early on in the investigation, just days before the girls went missing, because at that point, you know, the bodies have not been found. The bodies have been found 5 months after the fact. So while the bodies were still missing and we didn't know if the girls were dead or alive, police actually confronted Dan Morrissey in one of the, like, I don't know, like when he was like, you know, booked in for questioning. They kind of even pressed him. They said, you must know where the girls are, you did it, something like that. And after that, Dan Morrissey stopped cooperating, from what I'm gathering, or at least got a lawyer, lawyered up. So there was initial speculation that maybe Dan Morrissey himself could have done something to the girls. A few other notes I want to add about Dan Morrissey is that even after his daughter Elizabeth disappeared, he continued on making meth. At one point, he was making meth and potentially distributing meth in his home where he lived with his, I think, 16-year-old son. So he was like putting his kids in the meth environment. He didn't really care. It seems like Elizabeth, in my opinion, it seems like Lyric's disappearance didn't really put any difference in his like drug life. And then later on, 2013, he was sentenced to 90 years in prison with a 30-year mandatory minimum. So that's all I have about Dan Morrissey and Misty Cook. Do you want to add anything about like the Lyrics parents in this case? Do you think there's potentially a connection between their disappearance and Dan Morrissey's drug past?
You know, in this case, look at the jail sentence he got. The prison sentence he got is like it's more than a lot of murderers get. Honestly, I don't think it should be that way. That murderers get less than what he got, but that's the truth. So that's disturbing. But then that also, I think, sort of is a testament to maybe that there is something to the idea that he was moving large quantities of drugs. What they called one of the he had this giant piece of crystal meth that he was trying to sell, and they called it, like, I think the cops called it blue shards or something like that. There was like a special term for it. It was like the Excalibur of crystal meth rocks to smoke. I mean,
Jesus.
it's great. I mean, you know what I mean? It's like I wasn't joking. Like, it really does sound like something out of. Have you ever watched the show Breaking Bad? I don't know.
Of course, I've seen it. I've seen.
Oh, you've seen the whole. Yeah, I mean, it's an amazing show. I mean, sometimes it's pretty over the top, but um, it really does make you think about this. Like, this guy is, on one hand, it sounds pretty depraved when he keeps on making crystal meth, out of his house, when his daughter's missing and everyone's looking for her and all this other stuff's going on. But then on the other hand, this seems like this is what he does for a living. Um, this is like he's totally committed. He's got total commitment to the crystal meth career path. Um, the other thing, though, that's going on during this same period, though, is um, a lot of domestic violence, um, specifically from him against his the mother of his child, right?
Misty Cook, yeah. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I mean, that stuff. I mean, the stuff that was described, the violent acts, are just, I mean, stomach turning.
Seriously? I didn't really even. I did see. That's the thing. I didn't really look
Oh, yeah,
into.
yeah. Sorry, no, no. Yeah. Let me elaborate. Yeah, no. I mean, it's just like, I mean, just a whole bunch of physical assaults. So, once again, it's probably not really surprising that somebody who's cooking meth and um, kind of in the depths of, probably addiction, right? I mean, I can't imagine he's not an addict. It sounds like there was already for both of them a history of drug use and drug use arrests, but this like big nexus of like drug dealing or drug retail sales, and then the domestic. I almost wonder to some extent. I mean, I know there's mandatory minimums for like drug trafficking and things like that, especially at a federal level. Um, I can't help but wonder though if like some of this is actually just trying to keep everybody else safe, because this guy, I mean, when you're making meth, that's a very dangerous thing. It's very toxic too. Um, the amount of financial damage, environmental damage, and then the cleanup, and then we pay for it, the taxpayers, um, from meth manufacture is astounding. Illegal meth manufacturers, I should say. Obviously, pharmaceuticals don't pollute the way that a meth lab will. So, just from that perspective, having him locked up is probably saving the taxpayer of wherever he wanted to live a whole ton of money. But then you look at him, and he can't seem to like get along with other human beings, and he essentially, I mean, if you look at the charges, it looks like he was really close to killing um, Missy, right? It was like stuff with like he put his knee in her neck, and he had like a assaulted her and battered her, and um, like multiple times, and including I think overlapping during this whole investigation phase, both for his drug stuff and also for trying to find his missing daughter.
Wow,
So
I just want to
yeah,
step in. I didn't know the severity of the charges against him in terms of like the assault of Misty Cook. That's crazy.
here's a quote. He'll say so. He was pulled over, and he got in a bunch of trouble for found the cops found about a bunch of baggies of meth and marijuana in his car, which probably indicates to almost everybody that he's dealing. But then the next month, here's one of the domestic charges. Here's a quote from the article. This is from CBS News. Quote. Um, he was arrested and charged with domestic abuse after police said he threw Misty Morrissey to the ground, smashed her face into the floor, put his knee over her neck so she could barely breathe, and broke her finger. And then he was ordered to have a no contact, but then it was modified for like sort of these press appearances to try to get find their daughter when they thought her daughter was still alive, so they could like they could the restraining order basically was like suspended just for those press appearances, and then back into force. And then after that, he had all these other issues you mentioned, but just the one that was almost funny was that at one point they found him hiding in the porch of a vacant house and found additional drugs, including in quote unquote 8 ball of meth nicknamed blue shards that he was about to deliver. According to the
Whoa.
criminal complaint. Yeah, I mean, the guy's a mess.
Totally, man. Yeah, totally. I didn't really know like the details on his you know, like what he was like charged with, etc. So it's really good that you shed some light on this. Now, going back to the question, do you potentially see how his past could have connected to the girl's disappearance? I just want to quickly say one thing before I let you give your take, is that I do have a quote from Dan, I believe 6 years after he was incarcerated. This is from 2018. Speaking to news stations, Dan addressed the drug related theories of the disappearance of his niece and daughter. So I want to really read quickly his quote, what he told the media. He said, "Yeah, it doesn't even make sense if you think about it and play it out. You know why would this happen? If I had any idea of somebody that was in my life that I owed money to or had threatened me or anything, you'd think I wouldn't know who that person is? So, I mean, that would be the number one suspect on the case, and this thing would have been solved a long time ago. But there is absolutely nobody in my life that I owe money to or that I have told on or anything like that. That has nothing to do with my daughter. And why would they abduct Elizabeth and my daughter at the same time in another town? that my daughter is not even from, on a random bike ride that nobody knew they were going to take. It doesn't make any sense. And I kind of agree with Dan. Like, he makes a really good case that his past is not connected to the disappearance of the girls. This quote kind of made a bunch of sense to me. But then again, he's like in jail. Would he really snitch? Like, there's a whole snitch culture because like snitches get stitches in jail. So you don't really want to become a snitch. And he's facing 30, he's like at least gonna do 30 years. So those 30 years would be really hard if you're labeled as a snitch. So it's like, you know what I mean? It's like, I don't know. Your thoughts, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. If you think it, like you said, if you do the mental math on it, at this point, let's say, okay, so let's just go through the scenario. So the idea is he owes somebody something, right?
Or I
Um,
just quickly want to say,
yeah,
or sells a bad batch of meth.
yeah, or takes possession of ingredients that he doesn't pay for, or um, takes a payment he never gives product for. Whatever the reason, somebody wants something from him, so they kidnap his daughter and the person that was with her, who turns out to be her cousin, to put pressure on him, but he never caves, so they kill his kid and the other girl anyway. Now, the right away, the issue I have is, A, how do they tell him without the FBI and, or whoever else, the police agencies, whoever's involved, the same people that are, investigating him for, well, some of the same people that are investigating him for narcotics. How do they not notice this like transaction of like this like threat, this communication between, let's say, him and, I don't know, him and whoever his adversary is in this transaction, whether it's a former business partner, current business partner, competitor, pissed off customer, etc. Like, that doesn't make sense to me. And then, yeah, once now that he's in there for basically life, let's face it, right, or something close to it. I mean, yeah, it's true. He can win appeals and stuff. So maybe he is playing like the long con, like, or the long game. Like, oh, it's not over till it's over. I can always get out on some kind of legal appeal, or it happens, right? Just ask Bill Cosby, um, and
Yeah.
OJ. Yeah, that's right. So yeah, for both of those, but for that case, okay, so yeah, so that makes sense. Like, why wouldn't he? He has almost nothing to lose at this point, right? Why wouldn't he go ahead and just? I mean, unless he's worried about them getting to him in jail, what else can they hold over his head? Because it's like, unless there's other relatives that he cares about, which I doubt it. Honestly, he didn't really seem to care about his daughter even that much. Um, you know what I mean? Like what could you do to this guy that he would be afraid of at this point?
Also, I want to add one more thing now that I'm thinking about it. I don't think this crime, even if you would snitch on someone, I don't think you would have a harsh backlash
Oh
in
yeah,
prison
yeah.
because it's little kids.
Because you're right. Because you're right. Because they already broke the rules. Because that's right. The no snitch thing only works until someone breaks. Yeah, I didn't even think of that, man. Yeah, because that's one of those. Well, it's supposed to be one of the rules. You don't touch people's kids and family when it comes to this stuff. So you're right. That does seem like that kind of like is a get out of snitching free card.
Totally. Okay, so that's like on the Dan Morrissey thing. Once again, I'm leaning towards that his past is not connected. I I have a sense that his past is not connected, and the fact that the girls got abducted in a different town, like, I don't know, I feel like if someone was out to abduct his kids, they would maybe scope out the, lyrics high school or something like that. Not necessarily this random bike trip that was super random. Like, how would you know that they were gonna be there? Even the grandmother didn't know that the girls were going to be there, because the grandmother didn't know how far into the Evansdale neighborhoods they would drive. So I think it's not connected. Your like final take on that? Do you think it's connected or not? I just kind of want to know your
No,
take.
I mean, unless unless they've been doing surveillance for a long time and there's some kind of like longer term standoff between this father. It's hard to tell. I'm not sure if the father is an idiot or if he's some kind of like drug lord genius who got taken down. I mean, the way they gave him that sentence, either they're really looking to punish him and get him to like maybe turn on the rest of some network. You know what I mean? Like maybe they gave him the harshest sentence, or maybe they gave a harsh sentence to someone that they needed to put behind bars because he was an actual problem. But yeah, he's like a kind of a bewildering, bewildering. I can't get this word out of my mouth today. Bewildering character.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I don't get him. He seems to live this really frantic, violent, lawless life, and now he's like screwed. Right? 90 years. Wow.
Yeah, totally. So he's gonna be sitting in jail a lot now. Another, angle that I still wanted to cover on the show is the potential connection to the Delphi murders, right? And I have the map right here for everyone. So this is the distance between Evansdale kidnappings and murders and the Delphi murders. So it's because the similarities are two young girls are murdered around the same age ranges in Midwest. So that's kind of the narrative. The timing is kind of off in my opinion. One is happening in 2012, the other is happening in 2017, so that's like a 5-year span. I didn't really think that's a likely scenario. And just if you would quickly jumping to the map, man, just if you would look, like, dude, look at these purple points. These purple points that I have on the map here represent attempted child abductions from the same year in Iowa. And there's like a million of these little points. So there's like a million creepy people trying to abduct little kids every single day. Like, goddamn, there's like so many of them, right? So going back to the map that I was showing a little bit earlier, which was this map right here, another thing I want to mention is that look how many high concentration living areas, like cities, are here. Lafayette, have Indianapolis. You know what I mean? It's like, just to illustrate how far away these two crimes were, it's 405 miles away, in a whole nother state. I didn't want to stop here for too long. I did think about it for a little bit. I didn't see the connection, other than it's like a similar case. But your thoughts, man. Do you see like a connection?
Yeah, or like we always speculated with Delphi that maybe it was someone like a trucker or something like that. In that case, the 405 miles doesn't seem as daunting. Um, but yeah, I mean, like to your point, there's so many other weirdos trying to touch kids, which I know we're gonna list some suspects later on. Um, yeah, I can't. It doesn't seem likely that it would be the same
Yeah,
person.
totally, and that's why I didn't really wanted to step here for too long. Now, going back to the disappearance and the well, let's say the murders of the two girls, Lyra Cook and Elizabeth Collins. One other thing I wanted to mention, and this is mentioned by a lot of news articles and sources, that in December of 2012, police received two different separate confessions, men claiming to be the killer or killers, you know what I mean? In both of these cases, police were able to eliminate these men as viable suspects because they did not know the intimate details of the crime. So, once again, there were people claiming they have murdered the girls, but they didn't know the details about the crime that the police keeps close to the West, so that they could actually use this information to weed out the fake admitters, the fake confessions. So I don't know, just without stopping also here for too long, the two people on the same year admitted to killing the girls. Kind of wacky, right?
Yeah, just like I mean, We always see this though, even in the John Bonet case, right? You have all these attention seekers and people that have weird guilt complexes.
Totally. Now, also want to quickly read the FBI's offender profile before we jump to the person of interest, because FBI was involved in this case, and they released their behavioral unit or whatever released what they think the person who did this might be like. So the offender is familiar. This is according to the FBI profile. The offender is familiar with both Myers Lake in Evansdale and Seven Bridges Wildlife Area. The suspect chose Seven Bridges because he or she was familiar with the area and knew it was secluded. The offender blends in with and may be part of Evansdale, Bremer, and surrounding counties. The suspect likely used quiet coercion to gain the girl's compliance into leaving Myers Lake using a ruse or threats of violence, and that other possible characteristics include the suspect may have been experiencing stress related to legal troubles, spousal problems, employment difficulties, financial strain, or mental health issues in July of 2012. The suspect may avoid discussing the case or showing interest in the matter, but is likely following developments in the media. The offender may have attempted to abduct children or adults in the past. Following the disappearance, the suspect may have altered his or her physical appearance, such as changing hairstyle and facial hair. The offender's vehicle may also have been altered with a new paint job or reupholstery. So, your take on the FBI offender's profile? I mean, I just want to quickly add that from what I'm gathering, like FBI is pretty confident that the person was someone familiar with both Evansdale and Seven Bridges Wildlife Area.
It's interesting because they're sort of like they almost paint two different pictures. One picture is somebody who it almost sounds like they suspect that someone who did this could be someone who doesn't normally do this. But then they also have us looking at people who do things like this. You know what I mean? There's like these two groups of people they have to think of because the one that I thought was interesting was they're asking for people that know people in the area to think if anybody was having like a really tough time, like a major life stressor, where they would have reacted like that. And that makes sense. I mean, I can think of even a local vandalism case I might have mentioned in the show before, um, kind of in like a really wealthy part of the immediate suburban area I live in. Somebody was doing a bunch of vandalism, like early in mornings, like repeatedly. And then at the end of the day, it turned out it was like this rich kind of older guy, like older than me, like in his like 50s or 60s, who lived up in like Bel Air, who was like having a bad time in business, and some other stuff was going on, and he was like driving down in his like Land Cruiser or something, or Porsche SUV or something like that, and like flinging like using a slingshot to like take out storefront windows. But like that's like one example. So that's kind of an illustration of one example of antisocial behavior because of someone taking out what's going on in their life. It's somebody who normally wouldn't fit that profile, right? So this guy I just mentioned, like he was not who they profiled was going to be breaking windows on Ventura Boulevard in Encino, but yet that's who did it.
No, I agree that that's an interesting point. Like the suspect may have had like stress related or legal troubles, or spousal troubles, employment difficulties, financial strain, or mental health issues. When FBI said this, the first thing that came into my mind, are they hinting that the crime may have had sexual nature? Do you know what I'm trying to say here?
Yeah.
Potential sexual abuse of the two victims as well, because if like I was thinking, like, are they hinting that someone who was like stressed out, like just did like sexual abuse to like relieve some stresses. And this is why I'm saying this, because we don't know how the bodies were found. Well, we know how the bodies were found. We don't know in what condition or what was done to the bodies or how the girls died. We have no idea. So I was thinking, could this potentially mean that there's a sexual aspect in this case? Like, what are your thoughts about that angle?
Yeah, I mean, when the abduction, so as
Yeah.
opposed to like if they'd just been gunned down, right? Let's suppose someone just blew them away on the spot. Well, then the sort of like prosaic, I guess we'll say it, explanation of, you know, person going through a lot of stress, lashes out at the world, does something destructive and ugly. That makes sense. But then, yeah, the fact that they were abducted and then like no ransom is ever asked. You know what I mean? There's no like business aspect to this. There's no like organized crime aspect to this where someone's saying this is a part of a transaction or a threat. Like, yeah, I mean, why else would you kidnap two little girls, right? Um, why does that tend to happen? So no, what not? Rephrase that. Why does that tend to happen? And when that happens, what happens during those kind of crimes? And who does those crimes? And it's almost always men, right? When it's not a family kidnapping, then and it is little children being kidnapped. It's almost always men doing it. So yeah, I think I'm going to go with your conclusion.
Yeah. All right. Uh, Now I want to jump to the persons of interest in this case, and we have a few. The first one I want to jump is Michael Klender. This guy is a super like evil dude, and I'll tell you all about him. Michael Klender. Okay, so the story how he could potentially connect to this case is, well, approximately 6 months after the bodies of Lyra Cook and Elizabeth Collins were found in Seven Bridges Park, Michael Klender, who was a registered sex offender from Stratford, Iowa, abducted a 15-year-old Kathleen Shepard and her 12-year-old friend while they were walking home from school. The two girls were abducted by Michael Klender after he lured them into his vehicle under a threat of violence. Michael Klender drove them around for a bit, crisscrossing through the immediate area. Soon after, he drove the two girls to a pig farm that he worked at, which was quiet and isolated. Michael Klender then zip-tied the girls' hands and began separating them. He led away 15-year-old Kathleen Shepard, but left the other girl, who we don't know the name of, probably because she's the one who survived and legal reasons, right? Left the other girl unsupervised in his truck. The 12-year-old girl managed to escape the truck just moments later. She ran off in an effort to get help, which she found minutes later. When police arrived at the scene, they discovered that Michael Klender had committed suicide inside his truck, but the 15-year-old Kathleen Shepard was nowhere to be found. Kathleen Shepard's body was later found in Des Moines River several weeks later, about 20 miles downriver from the pig farm. She had been stabbed and beaten to death. Michael Klender had spent the better part of the last 2 decades in prison for kidnapping and assaulting a woman, in addition to kidnapping two 3-year-olds. It was learned that Klender had been released from prison in 2011, just months before Lyric and Elizabeth had gone missing. However, by 2014, it seems like investigators have effectively ruled out Michael Klender as a suspect in the Evansdale case. Special agents with the Iowa Department of Criminal Investigation had spent months comparing the cases and were pretty confident that Klender was not involved in the Evansdale case, not only because of forensic differences in the crimes, but due to Klender potentially having an alibi. Apparently, he was somewhere where he was accounted for at the day when Evansdale Murders happened. And last thing I want to do is jump on the map. So really quickly on the map, I want to map this out for everyone. These yellow points are the points of interest in the Michael Clunder map case. These red points are the interest points in the Evansdale Murders case. There's around 80 miles as the crow flies that's separating these cases. So yeah, it's happening around here. This is where the Evansdale Murders happen. So your take about the potential connections, and I don't know, like this is the only thing I have on this dude. Apparently an evil dude committed suicide, snatched up 2 girls, young girls as well, was released from prison shortly before the, girls in Evansdale were murdered. I don't know, it kind of seems like a possible connection.
Yeah, it seems plausible, certainly. I mean, and then just to be clear, so was he able to abduct, or let's say, was he able to abduct like more than one person at the same time?
Yeah, that's totally what had happened. He lured them in under
Yeah.
threats of violence, and these girls were
Wow.
older. One of them was 15.
Interesting. So I guess, I mean, he's sort of proof to the idea that it certainly is plausible and possible and does happen. It just you can get more than one person as one person to do it, even for something that is like, involving people that are younger ages and might panic, etc. That's fascinating. The grouping, though, I guess I mean, besides the fact that he had some kind of alibi at the time, the grouping also seems different. That I mean, nothing is at all near where this thing happened, right?
It's like 100 miles
Yeah.
by a car or something like that, right? And this is like the points. Why I didn't want to look into too heavy into these yellow points is because as I was researching, and all of these points in the map I found on a web sleuth post. There's some great people doing great things on web sleuth, but it didn't really make much sense because like this is apparently Dayton, the little town in Iowa that Michael Clunder abducted the 2 girls. This is apparently where one of the girls, whose name is maybe Desi, we don't really know, escaped from. And this is Kathleen's remains that were found downriver, 20 miles away. So he potentially, like, if he parked his car here and, Desi escapes, Michael Clunder takes, Kathleen to the river, beats her, stabs her to death. Then her body was flown down the river, if that makes sense, you know what I mean? And it was eventually found down the river. What's like, let's see how long ago, like 3 weeks later. But then apparently he committed suicide here in his car. I didn't really get that point, but like, I don't know, kind of seems possible, right? So, I mean, the police stated that they think that it's not connected, but from what we know, it kind of looks like it potentially could be connected,
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, final. Yeah, so moving to the next person of interest in this case, this is this creepy ass guy. This is Jeff Altmaier. Okay, so his whole story is he tried to abduct 2 elementary school girls by luring them into his car. Okay, so there's a little write-up about him. So this guy tries to abduct 2 little schoolgirls. He's not successful, thankfully. Now, these girls run apparently into the home. They're like, yo, this dude's trying to abduct us. These little girls' relatives and the neighbor jump in a vehicle and chase after Jeff Altmaier, who was driving his silver gray 2004 Ford Focus. Now, These people that chased this creepy ass guy, they stayed on him for several miles, pursuing him out of town until police were able to show up and arrest Jeff Altmeyer. Now, he was a 58-year-old man who lived in Acme, Iowa. He had served in the National Guard between 1977 and 1983. He had been married for over 30 years and now had two adult children that had moved out of his house. Jeff Altmeyer had spent decades working for security companies before becoming an independent security consultant. At the time of his arrest in 2014, Altmeyer was working as a traveling auto damage field inspector, which allowed him to travel through Iowa and the Midwest pretty regularly. Jeff Altmeyer was arrested and charged with trying to entice children, a crime that he had apparently been committing all over Iowa between May and December of 2016. Okay, so the other timestamp when I said that he was arrested in 2014, I'm not really sure if it was 14 or 16, so my bad there. But between May and December of 2016, if we're going by the logic that he got arrested in 2016 for this attempted abduction, Jeff Altmeyer had attempted to lure dozens of underage girls into his car at times, actually succeeding. Some of these girls were let go a block or two away, but on at least two occasions, Jeff Altmeyer had sexually assaulted these victims, who ranged in age from 6 to 13 years of age. Eventually, Jeff Altmeyer was sentenced to life in prison for his offenses, but investigators continue to believe that he might have been responsible for other crimes. Their rationale is that criminals generally don't start at the age of 58, and that having successfully gotten away with a crime might have emboldened him to lash out in a spree of sorts, which is what he eventually is convicted of anyways. So yeah, man, I'm just gonna take a sip of water because I really need some water. And your take on Jeff Altmeyer, this dude.
It's funny that the last sentence, when I read it, I was kind of confused because I was like, it didn't. I wasn't sure they were saying that he had done stuff like this his whole life, or that, because the way the sentence sounded like that, you know what I mean? The first part of the sentence sounded like that, and the second part of the sentence sounded like, but maybe he did just finally do a crime now and then got away with it, and then was like, oh, I can do the, like almost wanted to get caught and just kept doing it till he got caught, or just conversely had like bad judgment about his odds because of that, and then kept doing it till he got caught right away. So he sort of had like beginner's luck, and then kept going. But yeah, it's real strange. I think that was the part that made me wonder. Now, I will say, I have read about cases like this before, where men in this age group do start doing weird stuff, and it's I believe I mentioned in the show before, it's a form of like dementia for more often men than women. It's a kind of a forebrain deterioration. It's not the same as Alzheimer's. It's something similar, though. It's just a different part of the brain, but it often affects judgment centers of the brain. I've also seen similarly a case where somebody had a tumor that made them behave in some ways similar to this. Because of that, it drastically affected their behavior, and it was once again something that was not typical of how they acted before that.
Yeah, totally. Dude, you are always like super scientific with these, like comparisons, which is amazing. I just wanted to do like the more, you know what I mean, like simple, simple person. Also like you know what I mean, comparisons. Like I want to look at the distances, dude. So if, for instance, if Michael Klunder, which was these yellow points in the map, happened around 100 miles away, then Jeff's like evil doings are happening a little bit, like he was living around 100 miles away, because this is where he was living, but this is where the abduction was reported. So the abduction was reported maybe like 250 miles away, and he was apparently someone who traveled for work so he could commit abductions all over the place. So kind of makes kind of sense, because if this was his, like, let's say, base of operations, his home, you know what I mean, he was traveling all over Iowa. So I don't know, he could have potentially came here as well. But then again, why I don't believe, or I will say it's unlikely that Jeff Altmaier is connected, or I will say that I would say Michael Klunder is, I think, more likely to be connected, in my personal opinion. Obviously, maybe law enforcement knows something that we don't, and maybe it doesn't make any sense. But from what I know, I feel like Jeff Altmaier was someone who, as I've said, he released girls. You know what I mean? So he gave them like candy or something like that, and would like, like do some sexual devious stuff, right? Some evil stuff, man. And then he would release them, or sometimes not even touch them and release them. But now someone who committed the Evansdale murders looks like a super violent individual who is out to kill, kind of like Michael Klunder. And the whole setup, like, this guy was like sometimes getting away. Jeff Altmaier was sometimes getting away with these luring attempts. Now, someone who did the Evansdale murders had like a super good plan on how to do this, had like a good spot, knew the area. So I don't think Jeff Altmaier is connected, because I just don't see how a traveling random dude would like it's Evansdale's murders look pre-planned, a really good plan right there. Jeff Altmaier was like kind of winging it, and he wasn't even committing murders. He sometimes just would release the girls. He was a creepy old dude. He deserves to spend the rest of his life in prison, of course. But then again, I don't think he's a cold-blooded murderer, or at least as far as we know. And Evansdale murders kind of look like someone who's like cold-blooded out to kill. And this dude had clear sexual intentions in his crimes, Jeff Altmaier. Evansdale murders, for all we know, there's no sexual stuff there happening. I mean, there might be, but we don't know. So yeah, your thoughts, man.
Yeah, I think so. It sounds like you're saying that you think the suspect was an organized kind of person, and this Altmaier guy is just disorganized. He's ramshackle, and he's not even necessarily homicidal.
Totally,
From what,
man.
yeah,
So we don't think he's likely to be the culprit in Evansdale murders, right?
yeah, I think I'm with you.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Okay, dude. And then the last point, the last person of interest that we have here is the story of Teresa Gerelman. And I know you looked into this story as well, but before I let you let you have your take on the uh, Gerelman, I quickly wanna talk about Teresa Gerelman. This is the last person we have for the show in terms of persons of interest. So I just want to quickly read what I have on her, and then I'll let you have your take as well. On May 4th, 2018, at 5 a.m. in the small town of Belle Plaine, I hope I pronounced it correctly, located around 40 miles away from Evansdale, a 35-year-old Teresa Gerelman committed murder-suicide involving herself and her 8-year-old son, Henry Fields, as she pushed her son and herself onto a railroad in front of an approaching train. So she kills herself and kills her 8-year-old son. Okay, and I just want people to focus in on some of the Facebook pictures. Look how cute this little kid is, giving like a kiss on the cheek to like his mother, and then the mother turns around and like does this evil crap. But there's more. I want to read what I have. Interviews with Teresa's friends and family gave investigators context regarding Teresa's deteriorating mental state, while the footage obtained from the train allowed police to label this ordeal as murder-suicide. So apparently the cam on the train shows her throwing her son and herself You know what I mean? In front of a train. This incident led to a weeks long investigation which aimed to understand why this woman had decided to end both her son's life as well as her own. Police were able to learn that the 35-year-old Teresa Gerelman had been struggling through numerous mental health issues and had been going through counseling, in addition to being put on a number of medications. During meetings with support specialists in the month prior to the incident, Teresa had reportedly told them that she felt like, quote, standing in front of a train. Okay, that's kind of like premeditating like your future, and had even made mention of knowledge she possessed per, pertaining to a high profile double murder from the region. So she didn't only say to her counselors, yo, I feel like standing in front of the train. She also told them, yo, I have secret knowledge about the Evansdale murders. She wouldn't really specify what the knowledge was, but Teresa had spoken to her counselors about supposed evidence she held in her possession, a 6-page letter she claims had been written by the killers of Lyric Cook and Elizabeth Collins. These were apparently men that Teresa had hung around in the months and years prior, and according to her, in this letter, these men had confessed to the double murder in explicit detail. Talking about Evansdale Murders, of course. During the subsequent search of Teresa's property, several of her belongings were taken away by investigators, including notebooks, sealed envelopes, and multiple cell phones. However, it seems like whatever information police were able to obtain from Teresa's belongings, including, presumably, from this letter that she spoke of, was irrelevant. Police claim that they were unable to learn anything new from Teresa Gerelman's belonging, adding that her deteriorated mental state had likely made it hard for her to differentiate between what was real and what was fiction. They referred, uh, they referred to the letter in her possession as containing, quote, old information that they had received in the past, nothing new or revelatory. So, whew, that's Teresa Gerelman for you guys. She kills herself and kills her son because she's going mental, has mental problems, etc., etc., and talks to her counselors, says, I have a letter that was written by the killers of the Evansdale murders, and they describe the crime in detail in this 6-page letter. Police go into her home after the fact, after she already committed murder suicide. They apparently find some sort of letter, and they say that it didn't provide us with any information. So, your thoughts on Teresa Gerelman's situation, man?
Yeah, it's pretty messed up because I mean, on one hand, you had these weird reports of like her alleging that she knew something, um, to like these different people and these social workers, these social resources she's using. I'm disturbed because, when she was saying that, she feels like she wants to walk in front of a train or sees herself walking in front of a train. Well, that's a sign of suicidal ideation, and certainly a warning sign. Now, um, I put this in the notes. It's not that unusual, or it's a known side effect of people, on certain like SSRIs, like antidepressants. One of the side effects sometimes is that, especially if the dosage is changed, and that's very, very normal for people that are sort of trying to get on a new antidepressant or struggling with mental issues and trying to find the right dosage to, to be changing the dosage. Well, one of the side effects is increased suicidal ideation, unfortunately. for it. So that the very thing you're trying to maintain your mental health with, one of the short-term side effects is sometimes people are actually more likely to kill themselves. So I'm not totally shocked to hear that there were warning signs ahead of this. What does bother me is, and maybe this is sort of tilting at windmills a little bit, because it's the same thing we talked about with Mike Richardson, or other similar cases where there's somebody that's in bad mental health and something happens to them. In this case, there's a child involved, right? So this is, I think, a failure of the system, because, yeah, I mean, this lady is a danger to herself, but like there's a child involved who deserved, I think, better protection from the social services in his county and state, etc. So that, I think, I'm going off on a little tangent, but that part really bothers me with this case. In terms of her claims, I'm skeptical. I think I have to say that people that are dealing with mental health challenges like this, they're not always credible witnesses. And this isn't to undermine them or to doubt them or to challenge everything, because that's often like the other problem is that sometimes when you are having mental illnesses, sometimes people are actually gaslighting you or telling you things that aren't true, maybe to patronize you or to keep you from flipping out or, going to an emotional extreme. But, in this case, it just, excuse me, I'm gonna cough into the mic.
Yeah, it's okay,
Yeah,
dude.
sorry about that, man.
No,
Sorry.
no, it's okay.
Yeah.
Dude, yeah, well, just to really stamp a point in this case, in this connection with Teresa Geraldman, I wanted to ask, like, what do you think she wrote the letter herself?
Yeah. Yeah, I think this person was crying out for help in a lot of ways, and I don't want to be patronizing, but I don't know how this person would even have some kind of unique like insight into it, other than like supposedly she knew somebody, right?
Yeah, I mean, but she was going mental, so, and from what I've gathered, police didn't really focus in on her, so I kind of wanted to leave it at that. Actually, I lied. When this was the last person of interest, I lied, and I want a little bit of help from our audience members on this one, because I failed to locate more information. As you can see from this map, right, the purple points, well, as you can see, like the red points is the Evansdale's murder, yellow points, Michael Klunder connection, blue points, Jeff Altmaier connection, green point, Teresa Geraldman connection. The purple points scattered all over the map that we can see right now are the various attempted child abductions from that, like, I found on WebSleuth from the same year, from like 2012 or early 2013. And they all were kind of just your regular child abductions. Some dude drives up to the car, tries to abduct the child runs away. You know what I mean? Nothing really similar, except for the one that happened in Jesus Christ, what is this town called? Du Dubuque? Dude, can you please check out this? Dude, I'm gonna zoom this in because
No, I'm gonna mangle it too. I think it's Dubuque. Someone's gonna yell at us in the comments. Yeah, I don't know either, but I know what you're saying. Yeah.
Dubuque. Let's go with Dubuque, man. So in Dubuque, there was an attempted child abduction that happened on July, or sorry, is it July? Give me a second, man. I want to make sure I have this correctly. Yes, July 21st in Dubuque. There was a child abduction, but attempted child abduction on July 21st. Evansdale murder girls are kidnapped on July 13th. 8 days later, okay, these other points in the map, they happen months earlier or months later. This one happens 8 days later. I want to quickly read you the description of this that I found on a Facebook post. There were some news articles, but because I'm in the EU, I couldn't really read those, but there was a good Facebook article about this. So, attempted child abduction on July 21st, 2012 in Dubuque. According to the family, 11-year-old daughter Kristen Fort was in the 2700 block of Jackson Street in Dubuque just after 2 p.m. Saturday, waiting to meet a friend when a white van pulled up beside her. Now, I don't know anything about this white van because we know specifically in the Evansdale murders the white van is old. So I don't know if this is a new white van, old white van, I don't know. But it's white and it's a van. On Monday, the girl and her mother, Camille Fort Pfeiffer, sat down to talk about the incident. They said they're both shaken by it, but they want to use the situation to warn others. I was just sitting there. This is the girl saying how she was, how the attempted kidnapping happened. I was just sitting there waiting for my friend, and then the white van came and pulls in on the wrong side of the road and kind of goes right in front of me and says, "Hi, you're a very beautiful girl." And I said, "Thank you." And I kind of freaked out by then a little bit. Now, the man got out of his van and opened the side door of the vehicle. And then the quote continues from this little girl. "The scariest moment would have to be when he opened the van door because I had no idea what he was going to do. I didn't know if he was going to grab me, pick me up, or if he had more people in there." Also, this girl said that the man introduced himself and shook her hand. Then her quote goes, "He like touched my face and said, 'You're a very beautiful girl.' And then I slapped his hand away and just started running," she said. "I didn't know what he was going to do next. He had the van door opened. I was just so scared. My heart was racing and I just started running." This is the whole situation, right? I want to quickly do a few more things. The first thing, I want to map this out on the map. It's happening 85 miles away as the crow flies, so I would say around 100 miles away from Evansdale. And we also have, this is the sketch. So your thoughts about this attempted kidnapping 8 days after the Evansdale murders? Another white van, another young girl was assaulted potentially.
I mean, it kind of looks like the first guy you showed, right? The guy with the ears. I mean,
Clunder?
this guy doesn't have the ears, but he does. Maybe not. I guess you know what? They both have big faces, but they're different shapes. Okay, I take it back. And for sure, those big Dumbo ears would have been noticed, right? By
No,
whoever.
totally.
Yeah.
I just want to quickly do select this.
Yeah. Oh, the nose is kind of the same though. Maybe it's not. You know what? I don't know. It's not super far off.
Totally, man. Totally.
Yeah.
I didn't connect this. Like before, you mentioned that you kind of think like Clunder, Michael
Oh,
Clunder. Yeah.
and the other thing I'll point out, I think I mentioned this before.
Oh, well, how about
That
this
kind of
guy? How
broad.
about this guy?
Yeah, it's you know it's not. I mean the
Jeff
hair.
Altmaier. Jeff Altmaier.
Yeah, it's
Also.
true. I mean you know he's holding his face a weird way, so I bet you if he was holding it a more normal way, it probably would even look more. You know what I mean? Like he's kind of looking down his nose in the mug shot there. Like
Yeah.
yeah, it's like I don't even know why the cops let him do that. Because
Well,
he's just
but
I wondered.
he has a mustache. Seems like a dude who would keep a
Yeah,
mustache. You know what I mean? While
that's true.
Michael Clunder seems like someone who wouldn't keep a mustache sometimes.
That's true. Um, though, you know, if the dude's hairy, he might be able to grow that back pretty fast. Like, I mean, unlike people like me that can barely grow any beard, I've known people, dude, I knew kids in high school that could grow like a beard almost like the next day. Um,
Yeah, I know how that feels,
yeah,
man. Same here.
you know what I mean? Yeah. I had a boss too who was like literally, but by the afternoon, he was already like had half a beard going on. Yeah.
Jesus.
Anyway, I look at this thing. So the one thing I was going to point out, this is always something like interesting to note. See how wide that face is across the top there. This is like anything controversial. They think that it's not unusual to feel threatened by wide faces like that in men because it's a sign of high testosterone.
This area?
Yeah, like kind of across the whole brow on the well, both of them, but especially the suspect drawing.
Oh, like here,
Like
right?
yeah, if you would have noticed, I mean, look how wide that face is, and it's interesting because not all men's faces are wide like that, but they say that when a man's face is wide like that, maybe also women, it's a sign of higher testosterone levels.
Or a massive brain, right?
Yes, that's too right. Or well, maybe right, but maybe it was just a big caveman head. You know, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely looks like a big, scary dude. That could
And
grab you.
dude, as I'm looking at it, look at like the, like both of their eyes look kind of close to each other. Yeah, me.
Yeah, they got kind of a similar.
But like the ears, I think like the ears, for
Yeah,
some reason, really don't
yeah.
match here.
You
The
can't.
the
Yeah,
nose is like maybe a little too big in my opinion on the sketch. The hair
yeah.
kind of looks similar. Everything else kind of looks similar. You know what I mean? Oh, who knows, right? Who knows? It's really hard to say. But this is the other dude, white. I mean, if I feel like if this is an old white van and no one made the connections yet, like, are you smoking crack? Law enforcement, you know what I mean? But I feel like maybe the van is like a newer van. Like, what are the chances someone in 2012 is driving like a van from like the 80s? You know what I mean? I mean, it's Midwest, so maybe.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so totally. So yeah, dude, jumping. I think this is it, dude. I think I have like, it's been a long show. I think we covered pretty much everything we wanted to cover at this point. So I guess it's time to culminate this case to not go for way too long. So I will just say that in my personal opinion, okay, I feel like, whew, I don't know. It seems like someone who had a good plan. I think out of all of the person of interest, I think Michael Klunder potentially, but Michael Klunder doesn't seem like a man who would plan that well. He like was, I think he was like on drugs or something like that. So also doesn't seem like he could have done it. I feel like someone who killed the girls in Evansdale Murders had a great plan, was a creepy guy. I don't think anyone that we talked about had any connection. Maybe the guy from that, maybe the attempted abduction that happened 8 days later potentially had some connections. Other than that connection, I don't really see anything that we talked about today. Well, this is a big reveal to the audience members. My conclusion is I don't think we gave you anything useful or anyone to look into. So sorry about that, guys. I really don't think anyone that we talked about is connected. I think this was a great plan. I think I would say in my head there's a 50-50% chance whether there was two people or one person involved. I will say both areas were pre-planned, and I think it was just a random opportunistic crime. Someone was hiding in this location, you know what I mean, around the trail where the bikes were found. They had parked their car, most likely somewhere in this location. It's a really good wooded area to abduct kids, got the kids, drove away. It's really hard to say if the girls were killed immediately because the police won't release any details, so we can't say anything on that end. So I'm not even going to speculate. I think it was a random, opportunistic person. Police had over or around, let's say, 2,000 leads, so they had all kinds of creepy guys on their radar, and maybe they have already found the guy, but can't really finish the case, can't really find the final piece. So I will say that because of the low amount of information about the way the girls were murdered, I can't really say who killed them. I just know that I personally believe it was an opportunist person snatched them up, most likely killed them immediately on the same day, dumped their bodies, and is not yet, uh, you know, was not yet connected to the crimes. So that's where I'm gonna end this show. And dude, before we sign out, your thoughts on the case and anything else?
Nah, I'm the same page as you. I mean, I think going into the show, I was like, well, I don't even see how someone could do it like by themselves. But I think especially based on what you presented today, it not only seems plausible, it seems um, like probable that it was a single person that did it and was able to use the things we talked about, the different methods to coerce somebody into the car. And then maybe that's also why we don't have any more clues, because when you have more people involved, there's like more and more chance that somebody is going to tell someone something or get caught for something and then blurt out something. So yeah, I'm with you that just given the wide, the amazing amount of creepos, even in 1 year in a small place like what you showed in the map, for that many attempted kidnappings, and that's really troubling. And now I say that while some of the people we talked about, I think certainly match the profile of someone who could do what we talked about today, the, the odds of any of them actually doing it, I think, are far lower than, like you said, some other random person, just getting incredibly lucky with, a planned heinous crime.
Yeah, that's, I think, a good way to wrap up this week's show. Thank you guys so much for joining us this week. Please leave your thoughts in the comment section of our YouTube channel, or subscribe to our YouTube channel if you want to contact us, because the best way to let us know your theories is on the YouTube section's comment section, if that makes any sense. And we'll catch you on the next week's episode. I hope you enjoyed. I hope the rest of the weekend or the week is going to be amazing. And we'll see you on the next week's episode. Peace out.